I am so excited to be able to share the conversation that I'm about to have. It's with a pioneering yoga master who's created a unique blend of physical practice, Eastern wisdom, and indigenous ceremony to take yoga off the mat and into daily life. Her work has been known to heal anything from addictive behaviors to eating disorders to chronic pain and injury. Her partner is equally exceptional. He is a man of many talents. Amongst them are he's a musician, a producer, a composer, and most interestingly, he's a medicine man. I'm about to have a conversation with Ana Forrest and Jose Calarco. Together, cheekily, we call them Hosanna.
I'll take glasses off. All right.
Because the light keeps hitting off. So it's just
yeah,
a
I can see it.
shiny lens.
All right.
Great. So I'm going to introduce the two amazing people that I'm about to speak to. You can see their pictures on the screen. That's Ana Forrest and Jose. Jose, how do you spell your surname? How do you pronounce your surname?
Calarco.
Calarco. So Ana, most of us know if we are into yoga because of Ana Forrest Yoga. And, with her book that came out a few years ago, Fierce Medicine, which is an amazing book, highly, highly recommend anybody who is interested in a journey of self-discovery to read that, because she has one hell of a story. We'll go into that in a second, but I'm so excited to have you both. A real honor to have you on my channel, Self-Discovery Channel. And Ana, I would like Jose to give an introduction to himself, because he's got this really rich background. And then I would like your introduction a little bit more as I ask you the questions. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Perfect. Jose, so tell us a little bit about your background, the musician, the producer, the shaman, I guess, the medicine man, and now, of course, partner of Ana. So,
Yeah, sure. Well, my background was not yoga, even though I am a yoga teacher. My background came as an artistic director of Indigenous and world music. I began as the director of the Antonio Vargas Flamenco Dance Theatre, and we began experimenting all cross-cultural collaborations and bringing different instruments into flamenco, which is a spiritual gypsy-based music. And I'm director of Flamenco Dreaming, which was another world music company, and now director of Descendance Aboriginal Dance Company. And Descendance Aboriginal Dance Company comes from the world's oldest living culture, the Aboriginal people of Australia, dating back 40,000 years. And what I've done, and my background also as a piano player, guitar player, songwriter, producer, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to sound overbearing.
you're a polymath by the sound. You are a polymath.
I'm a man of all seasons, if you want to say that. But the thing is that the major project was the Descendance Aboriginal Dance Company, because the Aboriginal people of Australia hold wisdom that dates back 40,000 years. And when people talk in yoga about the holy Vedas, referring to that, which are 4,000 to 5,000 years old, where my people's knowledge goes back 40,000 years. And we still have the stories, the dreaming, entering the dream time. So we still, even though most of the knowledge was lost with the invasion, the British and English invasion, we still have a percentage of medicine people that can go into the dreaming, which is first-hand experience and not book knowledge. And I came into the yoga field with first-hand experience of dream time. And what I found, I'm just so glad that I got together with Ana in every single shape or form, because my problem with yoga was that it was very white, middle class, and superficial, a lot of the teaching. And with the indigenous stuff, and Ana, like getting such a real person like Ana, we were able to weave ancient spiritual technology, song, dance, healing, dreamtime stories, philosophy, music, and we did it all just on the weekend at Lord's, and they'd never seen anything like it. So people who had seen Ana alone were now seeing that the presentation was augmented and very much evolved to what Forrest Yoga was before. So I brought in all the wisdom and knowledge that I've accumulated over a lifetime of experience and traveling to 60 countries with Descendance, and I've incorporated this with what Ana already had. And we come from a place of experience and not book knowledge, and we talk of experience and not book knowledge. So that's a quick overview.
It's kind of like what you're saying is like you and I have both come from some really difficult places, and walking through that, there is no replacement for walking through those hells and walking through that healing. And it, in order to survive that, and in order to actually do that, it polishes and reshapes and transforms who we are as a human being. And even really wonderful books, just reading a book doesn't do that. And so the life experiences that we bring in and then set up an arena of ceremony so people can go in and quest for their own answers is part of how we work now. It's like we set it up and give them guidance so people can find their answers in a sanctuary.
Yes. So no, absolutely. And I think there is no substitute for experience. And books, however, they are very instrumental in awakening people, to inspiring people and giving them the courage to find it in themselves, to then follow their own path and to reference, you know. So yeah, there's a
books. The problem with books is then they build a belief system and a structure. And when you start to speak to people, they refer to their book knowledge and not to their actual experience. I'm with you. The book actually leads the horse to water, no doubt about that. And I think people are not there to do downward dog. They're there to sort out their problems. So Ana and I recognize that people are there not about downward dog, even though downward dog is going to happen, but ultimately they're there to solve problems. And we are giving tools, and we're giving a presentation which reaches the whole gamut of human emotions: emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental, where we're delving and cultivating all 4 areas of the psyche. So yeah, this is why Ana and I, when people start referring to a book, oh, I read that in a book, Ana always says, stop and give us your thing, not what Eckhart Tolle or Krishnamurti said.
Yeah, indeed. Well, so, you know, this is the reason why I was so excited when I had the opportunity to connect with the two of you. Ana, you began your book, Fierce Medicine, by telling us these words. I'm going to quote you word to word. Raging thunder, crackling lightning, and ferocious winds have followed me throughout my life. And I'm not talking about high energy weather disturbances, but the abuse that drove me to alcohol by the age of 4, cigarettes by the age of 6, weed and pills a few years later, and the raging storms inside my body: epilepsy, migraines, paralysis, and bulimia. Wow, that is really mind-blowing. I mean, the fact that you've lived to tell the tale is even more extraordinary. So I know you yourself became a yoga teacher at 18. Can you tell us about how Forrest Yoga was born? Because of course yoga has existed for thousands of years, and it's been added to, it's been evolved and so on over the years. You have had your own evolution with this. So can you share about how that came to be?
When I started doing yoga, parts of it were working for me and parts of it didn't touch where the really deep wounding was. And I was like, I'm an avid reader. So when we were talking about book knowledge, I'm not one of the people that throws books away. I love books, but book knowledge by itself isn't enough. You know, it's like even in the Vedas, it's like we can write this down, but then you need to work with the teachers and you need to go through experience. Yeah. So with the yoga, I found that it started doing something. but I didn't know how to describe it because I was pretty still foggy in my head and pretty much caught in a storm. Yet it didn't go into my deep pain and anguish. I didn't get any tools for that. And so as I did different yoga systems and did different studies, I'm an innovator. I'm a creatrix. Like when I worked in the horse world, I would work with horses and dogs and cats and animals and snakes and all sorts of animals, usually ones that had gone insane from human abuse, kind of like people. Wow. So I would work with these horses mostly and find ways to get through to their spirit, through the pain, through the insanity. And so I realized like the yoga that I was doing wasn't doing that for me. And it took me a really long time to turn it around, like, well, what can I do to heal? And I first had to make some really deep, hardcore decisions, like choose life. That was a tough decision because I had been flirting with death a lot. Mm. And that flirting with death is actually what helped me define myself. And so choosing life was a completely different thing. And every day, just like with stopping alcoholism or any other addiction, it's like, today I will not do this. I will not reach for the bottle or the smoke or the pills. I will not reach for suicide, basically. And finding out, first it was just a lot of like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then I started turning it around to, well, what am I going to do? You know, what builds my life force? What makes me want to live? What makes me be passionate about being alive? And where I was getting more of those answers was not on the yoga road, but it was on the Native American ceremonial road. It was through the ceremonies, through vision questing, through sun dancing, through pipe ceremony. These are where I began to get answers. And so for a number of years, those two parts of my life were separate, the yoga life and the ceremony life. And I had different medicine people asking me to come apprentice and wonderful things that they were saying, please come do this. You know, you're such a good healer. Come and learn this way. And I realized like, I couldn't leave the world I was creating in my own Forrest Yoga world, and I had to bring it together. I had to bring my two loves together. I had to bring in what I learned from therapy. I had to bring in what I learned from what gets archived in the cell tissue and how to free that up. I had to bring everything I had learned into yoga and call it something different. And that's how Forrest Yoga evolved, is what worked for me and what worked for all the different people that came to me that had different problems, but also different yearnings. And so what I started to feel was the people in this day and age are spiritually bereft. They're missing something. There's a gaping hole there. And so we try to fill it with our sex addictions or our food addictions or, you know, just all this stuff.
Or simple drama, just emotional drama.
Yes.
Creating lives with so much drama in them.
Yes, trying to create like these big dramas so that we feel like we're alive, when it's like that's actually just creating big messes. And so that's where the ceremony started helping me, is helping me learn how to quest. And what I was just discovering right before I met Jose was using sound, like in Drumming Journey, which is a Native American ceremony, how to use sound to go in and penetrate. And I was using Brahmari, which I absolutely love as a pranayama, to get things to buzz and reorganize. Like I was really experimenting with sound. What I didn't know is that the Aboriginal people have been using music and sound and song and instruments to rearrange the electromagnetic field for thousands of years. So when Jose and I began to talk about this brand new thing I was experimenting with had already been developed into a deep and rich field that I had just stepped into.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, what we actually did is for 40,000 years, when we sing and play, we sing to the bones, we sing to the soul of the person, and we can sing someone well, or in extreme, like in dark magic, sing someone dead. But what we did is use the ancient technology of vibrational healing, where the sound of the actually the night I met Anna, someone asked me to do a ceremony for Anna, and I brought my tribal people in, and we did a didgeridoo vibrational healing on Anna's heart. So I had my hands on the back of the heart while the didgeridoo player gave her a heart massage. So the vibrational healing, which we now bring into Forrest Yoga, is something that reorganizes the electromagnetic field, which is the first defense of disease, and just showed Anna how that's done, of reorganizing that and bringing music and sound, not as a pleasurable thing, even though it is, but as a medicine tool.
Wow. So indeed, this is the evolution of Forrest Yoga as we knew it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We're evolving to include native sounds or indigenous sounds. And I can just imagine just using the didgeridoo, on areas such as the heart center, just the kind of vibration that would have, and the power of that. I can just imagine that can blow the heart open, and at the same time, Anna, what's your experience of people that you've worked with so far who, for whom this kind of a clearing, if you like, or a healing begins to happen, as Jose just pointed out? It's not always pleasant. Very often it can be super scary for people when, deep hidden traumas and subconscious fears that they may not be aware of suddenly emerge, and they have no ability to, why they're there in the first place, as in like why they're suppressed. My view is that it's because whenever they came into being in that person's life or in our lives, we could only process a tiny portion of it. The rest of it we stashed away into some aspect of our psyche. And then when it resurfaces, whether it's 50 years later, as a child you can understand some things can be too intense. But in my experience, even when they've surfaced like 40, 50 years later, they're still really intense and really powerful. Not for the fact that, I may not have worked on it myself over the years in various, it's like a spiral. When you have deep traumas, they unravel, to the extent that you're capable of dealing with them. So it's like a spiral. So what's your experience of people who have come to confront things that emerge for them? What support do you provide for them? What experiences have you had to tackle in your classrooms?
First off, I think it's really important for people to recognize is like, yep, that's the way it is. And so when you go on quest for your healing, or you go on quest for your next step, you frequently have to go into these scary places, whether it's called hell or the Bardos or your own nightmare world or whatever you want to call it, is like you will meet things that are frightening. And this is part of how you build your courage and part of how you clean up your internal wilderness so that you don't have this slime inside of you affecting you and making you make stupid decisions and hurtful decisions in your life. You need to go hunting. Go hunting. And the arena that we provide is very supportive, and it's easier to do it with us in a class, in the course, than alone.
Yes.
The people that are doing it alone and think like, oh my God, this frightening thing and this most shameful, horrible, toxic, whatever it is, it's like, my friends, it happens to many of us. And you can turn that horrible medicine into good medicine because you can use it to connect to your spirit in such a powerful way. And then you'll heal from that. But it's like you have to go into those scary places to heal them. And you don't have to do it all at once. It's like when you look from the outside for a moment on the healing road, there's many different turning points. And to think that you have to get it all done in one time, it'd be like thinking you have to eat all the food that you'll be eating over your entire lifetime in one sitting. You just can't do it. It's sickening.
Not only that, but it's not helpful. It actually has the counter effect because the nervous system can't cope with it, for one thing.
Well, the nervous system will sometimes have its own little collapse and all that stuff anyways, because that's actually part of shaking it on out. And so there's a lot of crying and snot, and sometimes you get sick, and it's this big tumultuous thing, and it's okay. Yeah. Take care of yourself when you're doing that, but also don't resort to the old coping mechanisms of whatever it is that you do to go numb. So that's where you have to reaffirm, like, I'm choosing life and I'm willing to do what's necessary to heal and to evolve. One thing that I think is really fantastic, and I mean, this is what we tell people, is like learning these tools, you are becoming responsible for your own evolution. And that is just so cool. It's just like the sexiest thing ever.
Yeah.
You say it's really cool. I know, and I know it is, because that's my approach. I mean, the analogy that we're using, you and I, are two different ones, but they amount to the same thing, and both of them require you to go underground. So Karma and Diamonds, the inner diamond that I talk about, it is about mining away. So that precious intrinsic self that resides within, in order to get to that, we are at one level or another going to have to clear away the debris that covers the rock, the diamond, and millennia of stuff that has built over this precious thing that is there in terms of us as human beings. It's the conditioning, the pain, the experiences that we've had, whether you believe in past lives or not. I certainly have had incredible experiences of memories of, and also times.
So have we. So, yeah.
And so, not only just this lifetime, then there's like, because that inner being, the intrinsic self, doesn't recognize time and place. It simply has an existence that is beyond that. So, experiences, it builds up over time, and those ones which deposit out of not having been processed at the time when they happen, the traumas and whatever, sanskaras, then you have no option but to go underground and to get your treasure. You have to retrieve that, but that's the spirit. So the thing I love about what you're saying, Anna, is that you earlier mentioned, if you ask yourself, if you ever get yourself to asking the question, what do I love? What do I really, really love? The answer to that will inevitably lead you, I think, to looking inward and to looking at those layers which are obscuring your view of even what that might be, because even that could be, the answer to that question might even be a little bit traumatic for some people. Like it might be dangerous to recognize what do I love, and then to be able to do that, because it requires you to have courage. So I love I really love your analogy about the wilderness. So kind of clearing away, working your way through the wilderness. All of these things require you to have courage. And one of the things that you use as a pillar there are 4 pillars of Forrest Yoga. There's the breath and strength. And anyone who's done Forrest Yoga needs to know you develop a lot of strength when you practice Forrest Yoga. So that's the 2 of them. And then integrity and spirit. And I'm especially interested in your distinction of what is integrity in regards to the context that you're talking about. Clearing away the wilderness and accessing spirit. And then spirit is something that's intangible for most people. And it can have also many manifestations. So how does Ana Forrest define spirit? And then Jose, I'd love your answer on that as well. How do you know when you are aligned and present to it? So 2 questions. What's your distinction of integrity? And secondly, how do you know what is spirit, and how do you know when you're aligned and present to it? Maybe 3 questions then.
Well, with integrity is a kind of truth, and what Anna and I, we look at integrity on every level, like integrity in a relationship, integrity in business, integrity with our friends, integrity on the dinner plate. We're both vegans, so integrity really goes right across the board. So that's the way we look at integrity, which is a truth. Like, usually if you're bullshitting or not in line with the truth. You do have an inner conscious which tells you if you're not. So Anna and I look at integrity right across the board, not just integrity right across the board. Like we said, relationships, dinner plate, business, and there's an inner knowing if you're doing the right thing or not. So that's the way we define integrity, or the way we use integrity right across the board.
So listening to her in a voice, sorry Anna, listening to her in a voice to really
Absolutely. look, if you're doing a bad deal and you realize you're not telling someone in business that, oh, you know, I should really say this or that. Like whenever I negotiate deals for Forrest Yoga or Descendance Aboriginal Dance Company, I'm always upfront about all the circumstances, but sometimes the producers I work with aren't upfront about everything, which I learned this morning on a tour we're doing of China. But yeah, absolutely. Just listen to the inner voice. And if you're not telling the truth, you always slime yourself a little bit, and there's always a resonance in the mind and the heart if you're not telling the truth. So you've got to be able to be in tune with that. I think most people do realize when they're not being totally honest that they get slimed a little bit by that and don't feel right about it.
But then when you talk about the inner voice, and it sounds really easy, but we have so many voices. We have a pantheon and constant argument.
Mind monkeys, yeah.
Yes, and like part of the practice that we teach is how to shift out of that babbling insanity into getting your mind quiet and alert, and then being able to participate on the journey or the quest or whatever it is, instead of like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. You know, trying to shut up your mind like that just creates more and more conflict. So the inner voices at first, usually the ones that come up is the voices of your addictions, your justifications, your manipulations. So the inner voices, you have to sort through them.
Well, I don't know if you're allowed to swear on this program, but Anna and I have a term for the mind, which is the bully. The part of the mind which is dark and bullying and always telling us we're not good enough.
One.
And we call it motherfucker. So I hope you can delete that. But
That's okay.
I
call it the mind monkeys, and they have all different flavors, trust me. So that's absolutely one of them, yeah.
Oh, okay, yes. So we term that motherfucker, the mind that is the bully. And always telling us we're not good enough. But go on, Anna. So I just thought I'd mention that. You can erase that if you like.
So with integrity, that's also something that people need to be taught. So let's say we got someone in class. We make the mat, the sanctuary, the medicine circle, or the scientific laboratory of exploration, and finding out what's integrity. You know, how do you have a deep, integrous breath? Or when your mind goes off, I say, you know, you're pissing away the moments of your life, and you cannot reclaim them. Stop wasting your life. But also, don't beat yourself up about it, because this is what your mind has learned to do, and it's going to take a while to retrain the mind. But this is a teaching ceremony, so of course your mind will be retrained. That's the nature of what we're doing. Don't worry about it. So as soon as your mind wanders off and it's off on some fantasy or lunch or wherever it goes, you know, bring it back, refocus on what you're feeling and feeling the truth of what's happening right now. And that's a really good way to start to get educated in what's integrity. And then when I find the intermediate student, I'm going to not talk about yoga student, but like a spiritual student, will use words like truth and integrity and truth speaking in this really obnoxious, manipulated, shitty way. And it's just like, okay, so that's part of where we need to come back to integrity, because talking like this is out of integrity. And I asked Jose one time, since we've been together, I said, I need some help from you. I want you to write me a song for my trainees, for my people in teacher training, because that's our most intense and most utterly gorgeous thing that we do, is this month-long course of teacher training and ceremony every day, and learning how to be a healer and just coming to truth and speaking truth. It's just beautiful. And I just said, this is what I want you to form the song around. It's called I'm More Spiritual Than You. Than you. And why? It's because this is one of the biggest stumbling points that our people come to, is they start to learn a little about themselves, they learn some tools, and then everybody else is below them. And it's such an obnoxious place to be. And that's why I asked Jose to make this song, which he did, and it's hysterical. And it's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. We'll send it to you later. But
it's a great.
That would be amazing. I see if I can hook it onto the video at some
We
point.
do have much. We are just gone into the recording business, and Anna and I have 5 songs coming out. But our first single is coming out called Spirit Eagle. So we probably would prefer you to do a beautiful spiritual song like that.
Whatever you like.
It's up to you, but I'm more spiritual than you is really funny.
It is hilarious. And this is the other thing as well, is that, you know, people talk about being spiritual and not. And I think, well, no, the only difference is that you are, when we begin to, it's like they say, a little bit of information is dangerous, right? So when you start, as you say, Anna, you kind of, you know, there's this humility is missing. When we get started, it's as if we found it, whatever it is. But actually, the truth is, most of us, if you're on the planet, the chances are we're kind of getting started. We may have learned a little bit. We may have connected a little bit. But there is a massive long way to go as yet. You know, this is a sadhana. This is where we begin.
Yes.
There's a practice. It requires a lot of tapas, a lot of heat, you know, in order to cook and really allow the inner being to radiate and to become an integrated element of who we are, such that we are sort of like these luminescent beings, potentially that we could be if we were, I feel that our evolution will have us become much more integrated with this thing. So there is not this spiritual world and then there's this material world. It's like there is just the world. The spirit was the driver, and we recognize that. It's always driving the show anyway. But we recognize it and stop getting in its way and start to really see now, once the inner being, the inner diamond is doing the leading, it becomes your GPS, then what's possible in life? Oh my God.
Well, I think people learn the truth in bits and pieces. And so every time you do, it shifts your perspective. And like you're saying, how do people know that they're connecting to spirit? It's like in the ceremony, you'll have this kind of shimmery, bittersweet, exhilarating, like, oh my God, how could I have not been here before? And then you lose contact with it and then you regain it. And that's part of what we teach people to use as a guide. Like when I finally connected to my spirit, I just assumed, all right, that's it. Now that's the way my life is. And I lost it. And so learning to use your spirit as a guide, like what makes me disconnect? Or what helps me to connect? And then how do I embody my spirit? What is the visceral senses of embodying spirit?
What does it feel like? Yeah.
And like also having to quest for your spirit, because it may not be in your body. It may have, from a lot of trauma, it's like it can run out. Just like when you're looking at someone and you see them glaze out and they get that sort of cow-eyed look on their face, they're gone. You can still talk to them, they can still talk to you, but their spirit's not there anymore. Like the spirit can come and go really quick. And so we teach people how to make a connection that feels real. And, you're talking about coming down to the diamond self, or it's like coming into your authentic self. That's a good step. Connecting to what your heart wants, that's a good step. These are all steps on it. But then what if you chose to live your life in the way your spirit dictates?
Yeah.
How amazing is that be, instead of in the way your fear or your parents or your neurosis dictates? And that's how we choose to live. And, in the process of it, it's also an exploration, because those whispers of intuition, that spirit bit whispers, we may misinterpret it. And so we have to learn as we go along, like, oh, I thought it meant this, but now I think differently.
Absolutely. So, it's really that point at which you make that breakthrough or that connection, and then the next connection, it calls you into being a certain way. It calls you to dig deep into yourself. What qualities would you say you need to bring to the fore to do this? To be able to really embrace, first of all, confront, and then embrace what's there.
First is a willingness to go into the unknown. And it sounds very mysterious, to go into the great mystery. I mean, I love that. It sounds very romantic and fun, but it basically means you don't know what you're doing most of the time. And that's extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And all the knowledge that we gathered, it's like this much information, but everything that we don't know is like the rest of the air of the planet. And this is how much knowledge we have. And then there's the big unknown. So I think that that's really important to get. Like, we've gathered knowledge, that's good. but there's a lot we don't know. Breathing, deep breathing, active feet, so you're in your body. And then you start you start sorting out what is actually vitally important to quest for and what doesn't matter. It's part of what our bodies need to learn, like what is truly nutritious food-wise, information-wise, emotionally, and what just needs to be passed through. You know, it's like coming down to get simpler.
Yeah, what's been lost in today's time, and the reason that we crave Indigenous connection so much, is that the Indigenous people before invasion had a real connection to nature. I'm not talking about a superficial one, but a real connection to nature, and were able to commune with the trees, the plants, the rivers, and that's what's been lost in human society today. But the Aboriginal people still are tiny fraction of those people, some of the shamans. And Anna and I are lucky enough to know one of the best shamans in Australia, Kathy Marika. She's the one that married us, that still has...
You still married?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
But we're married blackfella style, as I say. We're married Aboriginal style, not conventional white style. So,
well, we did the conventional papers too, you know, for the Australian government.
But yeah.
But we did the real ceremony of union with Kathy Marika and the Yurikala way.
And she's an incredible shaman woman of the Yurikala people. But that's what's been lost, the connection to nature. And people say, what is the connection to nature? And we go back on books again. Aboriginal people never had one book, not one book. So in 40,000 years, there was no books. And like I was saying before, books helps you open the door, but there comes a time you got to put that knowledge aside and just go on a vision quest. And our vision quest was walkabout, where we would walk across a 50-mile desert or whatever and come to the precipice of where the mind begins, or you're either going to go insane and kill yourself, or you're going to get the breakthrough to understand the workings of the mind. And what we would do was walk, and we would watch thoughts like clouds drifting through the sky, and all the nemesis thoughts of where we want to kill ourselves, and they would be very, very strong and active. But there would come a point where the warrior would learn to only engage with thoughts of creativity and love, and that's all we would entertain. And then when the nemesis thoughts of wanting to kill ourselves came back a second time, they would be like tired travelers coming across the mind and would no longer hold any credence with us. So the observation of the mind in walkabout and vision quest was a huge part of realization. Was it enlightenment? Absolutely not. But what it did do was give us, when the demons did come back again, we would just know how to be above the demons, or still to live above the demons. But the connection to nature, it's a huge, huge thing that the Indigenous people still have today, but a very, very minute fraction of the Native American people that we also talk about that can have communication still with a river or tree, or to look at nature like a book and know when birds are coming in from the east or the west, that means something. Or when a lily is blooming in the north, it means something is happening in the south. It is a textbook. And this is, thank God, that our people still have just some connection with that nature.
Mm-hmm. So for you were saying about what are some tools? Well, we teach Forrest Yoga. These are the tools that we offer. We teach ceremony. We teach things that people can do on their own. Deep breathing, really deep breathing. And then stretching through the feet so that the person is grounded, but also so that, one, so that you learn how to stand supporting yourself, but two, so you begin to feel how you walk on the face of this planet. starting to realize the 100 million times a day that you can choose either to add to your own destruction and the destruction of this planet, or to add to the healing of it. Like, one of the things that helped me turn to being a vegan, even though I learned to pray over my food and I learned how to hunt and all that stuff, because I was a vegetarian in 1975 for years after that. But the vegetarian diet, as I was attempting to do it, was making me sick. But I didn't know at that time all the foods I was allergic to. And then shortly after Jose and I hooked up, I had this whole health drama go down that made me realize, like, I'm not eating animals anymore. I'm not ingesting suffering anymore. And it started to come right on out of my bones and out of my cell tissue. And I began to realize, like, I've been so focused on my own healing that I also didn't realize until I did a whole new set of studies what being a meat eater supported in this world, so far as the destruction of our planet and the ongoing torturing of animals and making our people so sick and just destroying the lungs of the planet by cutting down rainforests. And just, this is what the meat and dairy industry does, and that I don't want to contribute to that. And by being a vegan, it's a choice of bringing healing to the planet and not destruction. It's like, wow, so many of us feel like there's so many things wrong in this world and there's nothing we can do. There's many ways we can contribute to the healing of the humans and of this planet. And the way we eat is one of them. So 3 times a day, or however many times people eat, they can make good decisions. And I just find that wondrous, because we hit into that overwhelm and then into apathy so easily. And so I'm asking people, be brave enough to come out of that apathy. Like you were talking about courage before, but courage is something that is built one experience at a time. The courage to feel beauty, love, and pleasure, as well as the courage to go to the scary things.
The choice to be peaceful. The choice to be peaceful, that's something else. You know, the kind of learning to make your, to kind of bring shanti, peace to your thoughts. That itself is something which is a conscious choice, which makes a huge difference. And like yourself, I mean, I was brought up vegetarian. I come from Gujarat, where most of us are vegetarians. And although, we do tend to not vegan, but I stopped drinking milk. I had this real big, thing happened, this big drama around milk when I was only 7 years old, and I stopped. And for me, any kind of white foods, whether it's yogurt or whatever, it has to be mixed with spices or something in order for me to like it. But even cheese, I'll put loads and loads of Tabasco on it or something. So it's just. But actually, I wanted to share with you a little anecdote, Anna. What you're talking about, people don't realize it. When I met my husband some 12 years ago, he absolutely, he was just like craving something in terms of food. He didn't quite know what. Then he saw me cooking. One of the first dates we had was here at my house, where I made this lavish Gujarati, Hindi kind of Indian meal for him. And he saw me putting all these spices together and, cooking all these, like turning the most basic vegetables into something incredible, and then all these other vegetables that he's never ever heard of, let alone seen. So when I was doing that, at that moment he completely converted. He said, listen, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. He hasn't since that day. Now, on the odd occasion where I remember going to a restaurant one time when they had a stock which must have had some kind of bacon in it. I can actually smell, and he had that, I didn't, and I can actually smell through his pores, even that subtle meat smell. And I said to him, I can't believe you. It's just too much. You can literally smell in people's, sense what they eat. And people don't realize it, because most of us, we're so anesthetized.
We're numbed out. And the thing is that I was a vegan for 30 years. So when I met Anna and she was a meat eater, there was a conflict, because I'd been a vegan writer and an animal activist for 30 years, and Anna ate meat, and I thought, but we did speak about it, and thankfully Anna was able to change, but I didn't force her to. You don't force Ana Forrest to change anything, but she did. She she came around to it, and she could see that the single most valuable thing anyone can do on this planet is become a vegan. A vegan needs 1/20th of the resources of a well, 1/5 what a vegetarian needs, and a meat eater needs 20 times the resources of what a vegan needs. So I'm a vegan speaker, and I brought veganism into Forrest Yoga. Very unpopular I was when I first brought the vegan principle in there, because everyone was just an unconscious meat eater and didn't realize the connection between environment, compassion, and personal health, the three keystones of being a vegan. And still today, what I say is becoming a vegan is the most important thing that we can do for the planet, because if everyone ate like the USA, we would need 4 planet Earths in resources. So that's even a bigger thing. Sure, we're talking about spiritual issues here, and that is definitely a great thing, but we can all begin with a diet that is compassionate for the animals and the planet. Just to begin with, and that's a great start.
Albert Einstein also said something very similar to that. Do you have his quote in your
Albert
mind?
Einstein said the single most important thing that the human race can do to survive and to evolve is become vegetarian.
Yeah, he did.
Yes.
And that was pretty amazing. Like for me, I have loved animals to the degree that I was able to love, but the cats, the dogs, the snakes, the lizards, the birds, that's where I would make my first connections. And so when I went into medicine being Native American medicine, to connect to these things, it's like, yes, that feels so right. But then part of what I had to look at is a level of denial that I was dealing with that I never came to terms with. It was just like one of those conflicts I didn't know what to do with when I stopped being a vegetarian and then became a hunter. And I learned from the Native American people how to pray in gratitude over my food, and that was helpful. And to thank that deer or whoever it was that I killed, that thank you for your life force and I won't waste it. So that helped me with healing my bulimia. But then I found out, this is so crucial for me, I found out I didn't need to kill to live. I didn't know that. And that was hugely important. And then realizing that my deep, deep love for animals was compromised by this eating animals and eating animal products, because I was adding to the exploitation and the slaughter of these animals that I loved. And that was part of the conflict I couldn't come to terms with. And now I no longer have that barrier inside. I was like, wow, that was very painful. And it wasn't until I was 56 that came down.
Well, I think there's a lot that goes with the ownership of what you're talking about, confronting, eating meat, the need, people convince themselves. I've never really ate much meat, so I would say, for me, it's just never agreed with me in the few occasions I've tried. But the thing is that, there is the conscience niggles at you when you're grappling with it being harmful to animals. It's like, because it's been something that people have done for so long, and the idea that the possibility of confronting how the implications of what you've already been doing, is also huge for a lot of people. And so it's easier just to deny that, or to make an argument, against it and justify it.
Yeah, and there's a few different elements that come up is when people think like, oh, I'm going to be deprived. It's like I eat more variety and more delicious food than I've ever eaten in my life being a vegan. I just had to get educated to it. And then the next thing is people get all fixated on their health, which I totally understand, because I had to be so focused on it because my health was so fragile for so long.
Yeah.
It's like, well, where do you get your protein? You can't be strong as a vegan. It's like, look at a horse. You're going to tell me that's not strong? The strongest animals on the planet are vegetarian, vegan, actually, like the elephants and the giraffes. And it's like these really big animals totally get their protein. And it's like, where do we get the protein?
Yeah.
The same place that the animals do, from plants.
Well, in 1950, factory farming began, and a whole propaganda campaign. Factory farming was the mass holocaust of animals. And with that came a propaganda campaign and the food chart, the vegan scare, the protein scare, the B12 scare. And this was all just total manipulation, because all green leafy vegetables have protein in them, twice as much as meat. So even carnivores eat vegetarian animals to get the protein secondhand.
So I'm going to pause you for just this,
Yeah.
since I know the animal world really, really well, you know, having been with the animals and in the wilderness so long. When an animal kills a cow or a deer, they eat the stomach stuff. They eat that already chewed up vegetables because they need it too.
They need the protein which comes from the plant. But anyway, this has gone from a spiritual talk to a vegan talk. We got off track a little bit.
You know, I kind of feel that my approach on these things is to let people really come to that place for themselves of realization and choice. I've been a vegetarian all my life, and trust me, I can't even be in a room where meat has been cooked. It's very, very difficult. So, but I've learned not to be evangelical about it, because I also understand that it's a journey of self-awareness for people, and I honor their journey, and you know, all I can do is we can inspire them to the possibility.
Well, I think we need to give people information too. I think as teachers, we need to teach them, and then people make their own choices.
Yeah.
But I want to keep coming back to something that you had said, like, what are the steps people can do? Is like step one, stop poisoning yourself, my friend. Stop poisoning yourself.
So the food is a big one. That's what we do not go around pushing this, but it's part of the Forrest Yoga curriculum to give the information and education.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't give the information and education, people aren't going to pick up a Krishnamurti book, or people aren't going to start eating lentils instead of rotted meat. You know, so it's up to Anna and I to give the steps to living a more healthy life, or building your own sense of hope. And diet is huge, is a huge part, because we stuff our face 3 times a day. So you can't be eating pizza and reading Eckhart Tolle books, and you can actually do that, but you know, one is defeating the other purpose. So
well, I think the point itself is that I think you mentioned 3 times a day. I actually can't eat 3 meals a day. We just eat too much.
Yes, I agree.
Well, however many times a day people eat is like, here's where you can make good choices.
Yeah.
How fabulous is that? And it's like, you know, I like making things come down to simple steps. Like, where does someone begin? Start with making good choices, and you don't have to like study 75 nutrition books, because you know the difference between broccoli and a McDonald's hamburger. No matter how ignorant you claim to be, you know the difference.